Good evening, everybody, and welcome on this cold and what could be very rainy white night. We talked about Sha'ar Halicha, that goes to all of you for coming, and certainly the zchut of the learning as well. As is our custom and practice, we dedicate the learning that we do in the zchut of returning our chatufim, our captives, alive and well to their families. We are hoping that the zchut of our learning goes to the cholim and the pitzuim, our brave soldiers who have been wounded on the battlefield, and certainly for the safety of our HaElohim. May they come home from the field of battle safe and whole, and most important, victorious. And as next month is Shabbat, our next Shabbos is Shabbat Mevorchim, and we are bringing in Adar, which is the principal mitzvah of that, outside of Purim, of course, is Zachor, to remember Amalek. So may the zchut of our learning, like David HaMelech's army, go for the complete and utter victory over the modern day Amalek, b'yachad nenatzeach. So last week, Ibn Pekuda took us on a little bit of a detour, and he told us a novel way to look at the mitzvot. And he says that the Torah deals really with all human activity, not just the mitzvot aseh, the mitzvot that we're obligated to do, and the mitzvot lo taseh, the mitzvot that we're obligated not to do. He said that we need to look at all of the day-to-day activities, like eating and drinking and speaking, having marital relations. He called these things permitted things, certainly permitted under the rubric of the Torah. But he said you had to see all of these activities through a Torah lens, right? And just like things in the Torah are either permitted or forbidden, also we need to evaluate these day-to-day activities as also being either permitted or forbidden. So the Chovot HaLevavot said the lens that we need to apply to these everyday activities needs to be evaluated against three categories. He said, one, sufficient to meet our needs; excessive, which is beyond what we need; and deficient, purposefully less than what we need. So in quick review, the Chovot HaLevavot says sufficient to meet our needs is good, even though we don't have a good handle yet on what it means sufficient to meet our needs. Excessive is bad, and we all kind of intuited that that was the case. And deficient can either be good or bad, depending on our motivation for depriving ourselves. If it's for a purpose other than to serve the Borei Olam, the Kadosh Baruch Hu, it's bad. And then the example he gives is if we are reducing significantly what we eat so that we can save money, or because we want to diet, that's not particularly laudable or praiseworthy. On the other hand, if we say food is just not that important to me and I don't want to spend my time eating, I'd rather spend my time doing something else in the service of the Kadosh Baruch Hu, then that could turn out to be a good thing. And we said that in order to apply this lens, we really need to spend our lives paying attention to everything we do and asking ourselves, is this activity I'm about to partake in, does that add to my Yirat Shamayim, or does that detract from my Yirat Shamayim? I'm going to pick up a book to read. Is it going to add, subtract, or be neutral? And then if it's neutral, then we have to ask ourselves, is this how I want to spend my time? So next, Rabbeinu Bachia, to remind everybody, presented us with two hierarchies, right? One, in terms of learning Torah, it was a hierarchy from 1 to 10. The other was a hierarchy of people in their relation to the Kadosh Baruch Hu in terms of their faith. And it started out relatively low in terms of people who are atheists to people who are gedolim. And he mentioned people like the Anshe Knesset HaGedolah and everything in between. Now, the Chovot HaLevavot brought us this list as a challenge. He wanted us to know that wherever we are in our learning, wherever we are in our relationship to the Kodesh Baruch Hu, there are levels above, and that we should strive to meet them. And we should know that there is a place for us to go from where we are. And I brought, to kind of to summarize it, a quote from Robert Browning in his poet Andrea del Sarto. But a man's reach should exceed his grasp, or what's a heaven for. Let me bring this now twice so that my 10th grade English teacher will be very proud of me. Chutz doesn't have much bearing. Okay, so this week we are going back on track, and we are speaking about what this Sha'ar is about, which is service to God and how it works. Specifically, this evening, we're going to discuss the role that Torah plays in awakening us to serve God and in helping us to want to serve God. We'll talk about what that means in a little bit. So the way Rabbeinu Bachya thinks about growing in Avodat Hashem is an interplay between the intellect and the emotions, right? Between the brain and the heart. He will coin it between the mind, which he calls the sechel, and the neshama. It is an ongoing dialectic, if you will, relationship. So the mind, as you can imagine, is rational, and the heart is emotional, and the Torah is geared primarily on working on the mind, to approach us intellectually and to motivate the mind, because in his view, the mind is driven by the intellect. And once it is satisfied and awakened, it then goes to instruct the heart. So the way I think about it sometimes is that we can know things intellectually and not know them emotionally. Let me give you kind of a trivial example. I might know that I shouldn't eat this piece of cake. And I know that it's bad for me, and I know that I shouldn't do it. I do it anyway. Right? That's the limitation of here. If it's an emotional attachment and I really believe I shouldn't eat it, then the answer is you will never, right? If you have a piece of cake versus a piece of nevela, something that's true, you wouldn't even think about that, because your knowledge of not doing it is here and here, right? So Ibn Pakuda says that in order to awaken the neshama, to serve the Kodesh Baruch Hu out of Ahava, the mind or sechel needs to convince the neshama, convince the lev, that it needs to serve the Kodesh Baruch Hu out of love. Now, like we said before the sechel can do that, it itself needs to have this kind of hitororut, this kind of awakening, through learning the Torah. So the process is, you learn the Torah, it convinces the mind, and once it's convinced, it goes and works on the heart, so to speak. Now, to our benefits, the Kodesh Baruch Hu has hard-coded in us certain tendencies and beliefs that make it easy for the Torah to be implanted into our minds and for us to accept. So he says that there are 6 things, and these six things are going to play out in future weeks as we finish this Sha'ar. These 6 things are as follows: that we, as humans, value truth over lies. I mean, that's kind of axiomatic. You go to anybody and you ask them which do you prefer, and they'll say, I would prefer people telling me the truth. The truth is a value. People prefer righteousness and avoiding injustice. people have an innate sense of what's right and what's wrong, what they should do and what they shouldn't do. Now, it's not everybody, and it is culturally dependent, but that feeling that people need to do the right thing is hard-coded into us. He says also that gratitude is implanted in us. And the way he puts it is that we have a sense that if somebody does something for us, we feel a debt of gratitude and we need to repay them. And not only we need to repay them, we also have a sense of proportion. So if somebody does us a small favor, we want to repay them in a small way. If somebody does a great favor, we want to repay them in a great way. If somebody opens the door for you, you don't say, "Take my car, please. Thank you. I appreciate it." Right? I mean that because they'd say that's crazy because that's so disproportionate for what the kindness that you give. But we have a sense of what's appropriate and what isn't. We also have a sense, according to the Chovot HaLevavot, that evil needs to be punished, right? That wickedness needs to be punished. And we also have a sense that we want to get along, right? We have a sense of belonging. We want to get along with people. Now, it doesn't always happen, but these 6 areas are kind of fertile ground that we all tend towards, everything else being equal. So these, in turn, are the 6 principles that the mind needs to implant in the heart as a foundation for serving the Kadosh Baruch Hu. And he's going to go through all of these and say, this is how you transform this into the service for God. This is how he says it. He says, and if God prompts, this is source 1. And if God prompts him in regard to the right way for him, he will arouse his mind and soul to appreciate his favors towards him, and he will intensify his recognition of these favors. When he tries to recount them and grasp them in his mind and cannot do it because they are so all-encompassing and abounding, constant, continuous, he will demand of his soul what his mind recognizes as obligatory. So the mind will now say, now that I know that this is Chovot, this is obligatory, I need the emotional attachment. Repaying the Almighty, may he be exalted for the abundant good he has showered upon. Okay, so that's kind of the preamble that the Chovot HaLevavot brings to this. So given this, the purpose of the Chovot HaLevavot in this Sha'ar is to help us answer the question, what is it that we need to do to foster this awakening in the heart? And the rest of the Sha'ar seeks to answer this question. But for the rest of the Sha'ar, and I recommend that you go, I know we just read pieces, go back and find an English translation, you can find one online, because he changes his style just for this Sha'ar. Up until now, his style has been one of a teacher to a student, of a colleague to a friend, and he is just talking. What happens now is he changes it to a dialogue, almost play-like, between the seichel, between the mind and the heart. And it's a question and answer format through give and take. Now, we are not unfamiliar with the value of questions and answers as a pedagogical tool, right? I mean, the Haggadah is certainly the poster boy example, which is all built on the pasuk, "V'hayaki yishalcha bin chamachar," and your child shall ask you tomorrow, saying mazot, saying this, v'amarta elav, and you should say to him, "B'chozek yad hotzianu, Hashem mitzrayim mibeit avadim." Right? The whole Haggadah is based on this pasuk, that we need to have a give and take, asking questions and answering, as a way not only to get information, but as a way to clarify your thinking and your thoughts and expressions. Okay, so first things first, the moach, the seichel, has to ask the neshama, is this something you want or not? Because nothing happens unless you want it. And he asks 4 foundational questions. And the questions are as follows. Do you truly believe that an individual owes the Kadosh Baruch Hu a debt of gratitude for all the beneficence he has received and continues to receive? Next, do you believe if you owe this debt, right, you have an obligation, do you really think you should pay it back? Third, is repaying back and serving the Kadosh Baruch Hu something you want to do? And is this something that you intellectually want to do, or do you really desire to do it? Right? There's an old light bulb joke that they say, how many psychiatrists does it take to change a light bulb? And they say 1, but the light bulb really needs to want to change, right? If the answer that the neshama gives is not a resounding yes, then the Seichel says, don't waste my time, don't waste your time. Listen to what he says. If you are, this is source 2, if you are telling the truth in what you're saying, the treatment may possibly be successful in your case, meaning what I am going to suggest to you. Now, we know very little about Ibn Bakuna. Based on this interchange, where he takes the role, mind takes the role of a physician, it is clear that he was a physician. It's clear to me. Okay? But if this is not the truth, you will only succeed in deceiving yourself, for when a patient lies to his physician, he only deceives himself, wastes the physician's efforts, and aggravates his illness. In other words, if you're not serious, let's be friends, shake hands, end here, because there's no benefit to you, and certainly no benefit to me. But if you're longing for him being the Kadosh Baruch Hu, stems from a clear realization how great is the debt you owe him, how little is in your power to repay it, and that your neglect in repaying it is your ruin, meaning there'll be big consequences you need to pay for not doing it, while your diligence in it secures you your salvation and life, that's the upside, then your longing is genuine and your desire is ardent, but if not, it is false. So out of a series of questions, each one, the neshama here says, yes, I'm interested. And in the end, he said, be sure you're interested, because what we're going to embark on is not going to be easy, and it will have no impact if you're not going to take it seriously. So now that we have established that the neshama knows what the end game looks like, and he said that he sincerely wants to go there, then the mind says what it is going to take for the neshama to change and to grow in his Avodat Hashem, right? I mean, the neshama is obviously us, the message to us. So the short answer is change. First, the neshama has to change from the characteristics, its habits that it's acquired over the years. And the neshama asks, okay, what are these habits that I need to change that you think are so egregious? So he said that there are a lot of them, but they fall into 2 basic categories. Here are the categories. 1 is a desire for the pleasures of this world. And 2, he says, is arrogance. We'll talk about the first one in a minute, but arrogance it's the conviction that we really don't need the Kadosh Baruch Hu. There's a phrase there's a pasuk that says, "Bekochi ubeotzim yadi asali et ha'chayil hazeh." From my own power and strength, I have accomplished what I've accomplished in my life. So yes, there's a Kadosh Baruch Hu. We say Baruch Hashem, but where was he when I was working? Where was he when I was planting in the field? I didn't see a partner. I'm responsible for all of this. It's that kind of arrogance that shuts out the Kadosh Baruch Hu from the equation. right? So I want to talk about the first one a little bit, which is the soul's desire for the pleasures of this world, right? And we had talked about early the balance between the soul and the body, and the soul is uncomfortable in the body because the soul is complete yes, and the body is complete. But over time, the soul makes accommodations, and he becomes very used to and very happy being here. So the Pele Yoetz, in speaking about eating and drinking to excess, right, he says the following, that if you are on the border of gluttony or drunkenness, right, I mean, really to an excess, it says, Mosif koaf besitra. This is source 3. You add power to the power of the Yetzer Hara. And because you eat and you drink to excess, your sense of values is not correct. And or how you behave yourself. You don't comport yourself correctly. And as a result, because of your behavior, you now make what's usur permitted. Right? There's a Gemara that talks about that says that if you do an favor 3 times, it's now permitted to you. And they say permitted to you. You do it 3 times, you now feel it's permitted to you. Right? You can now continue. It's obviously not permitted, but that's the attitude you've trained yourself. Even because you have eaten and drunk in excess, and we can apply this to any one of the desires. Kasher shafad lo yosif lakum ad avar zman tefila b'tzibur v'kehine ra'ot rabot. What's going to happen, he says specifically with eating and drinking, is you're going to go home and you're going to have a big meal and you're going to ignore davening. Right? So what it means is if you're involved in these worldly activities, the activities that are dedicated to the Kadosh Baruch Hu are going to be less important to you. And you're going to start to neglect them. And the Maharai, who is the Chida, Rabbi David Chaim Azulai, says in his book, this Tzipar Shamir, this is, and I quote, Amru betana de Eliyahu. It is written in the Tana de Eliyahu. These are midrashim that were recorded by the Tanaim from Eliyahu Hanavi. Eliyahu Hanavi told him all these midrashim. They wrote it down in this book. Lo nikbetu b'nei adam lemita ve'ein kol b'riya yoredet liyad sar. That people do not gather to die or creatures to descend into sorrow, Ella, except mitoch achila v'shtia, v'simcha mehevlei olam hazeh. And taking over the excess part of the world not just prevents the neshama from, it takes it in the wrong direction. It prevents him from really carrying out what he knows in his heart he should do. For those of you who are not familiar with this sefer, it's a great sefer. It's called the Pele Yoetz. It was written by Rabbi Eliezer Papo in the 19th century in Bulgaria. What it is it is an encyclopedia of Jewish terms and thoughts. So you'll go up and you heard a term, you can look it up. But it also goes into advice on into relationships between parent and child, husband and wife, employer, employee, how to comport yourself. I mean, it is a wonderful, wonderful little book. So the message really is the same for both of these categories, both arrogance and excess, because they interfere and sometimes block completely our Avodat Hashem, right? And what we need to do is curtail them back to the point where we can now begin to worship the Kadosh Baruch Hu. And this is obviously easier said than done, but how hard is it really to change a habit? So the Ramah, so I'll tell you, sometimes impossible. The Ramah in Torah Olah says that changing a habit takes 30 days, right? If you keep it up for 30 days. And we have that lahalacha. So when we say Mashiv Haruach U'Morid HaGeshem, and we switch from Morid HaTal, if we do it within 30 days, we assume, if we think we missed it within 30 days, we assume that we missed it because it's not yet a habit and we have to go back and repeat it. If, on the other hand, it's already past that time, it's 30 days past, we assume that it's a habit and that you can assume that you had said it. But we're talking about attitudes and character traits and behaviors that are deep-seated habits and not so easy to shed. So Rabbi Yisrael Salanter, who was the founder of the modern-day Muslim movement, he said famously, it is easier to learn the entire Shas than to change one midah. So think about this, right? It's easier to learn the entire Shas. So what does that mean? So if you want to just do a quick calculation, learning the entire Shas at a Daf Yomi level takes how many years? 7.5 years. 7.5 years. So the minimum amount of time it takes to change a character trait is 7.5 years, right? And that's if you really learn it during Daf Yomi. So the neshama, when he hears this, says, that sounds pretty difficult. And the Seichel actually compares it to being worth it to being amputated a gangrenous limb. And understandably, with this example, the neshama says, okay, maybe it's not worth it. Maybe what I gain is less than what I lose. It sounds like a great effort, and it sounds like it may not be worth the pain. So the Seichel says to him, and this is source 4, the goodwill, meaning your benefit, will be your tranquility and relief from the gloomy darkness of the world, the pleasures of which are mingled with sadness, its lusts brought to an end. This will bring you to recognize with the full force of your recognition the place of your repose, meaning Olam Haba, to work for it and to be concerned about it. This is one class among the many classes of virtues on which your salvation and your very life depends. So here's how I think about it, is that our neshamot, we brought them to a place that they don't realize the danger that they're in, or the state that they're in. So I know I bring a lot of movie references here. I'm a big movie fan. So here's one, how I think about the state of the neshama. There was a detective movie starring Humphrey Bogart called The Maltese Falcon. So The Maltese Falcon is a golden, jewel-encrusted, very valuable statue. Over the years, it has been blackened and encrusted in lead. And you can't see the gold and you can't see the jewels. It doesn't shine. So the way I think about that, our neshamot, is through our actions, we have covered it with black pitch. And we have made it so that it can't shine. The benefit to these changes, to changing the midot and changing the attitude, is removing the pitch so that our neshamot can shine and can connect with the Kadosh Baruch Hu like it's supposed to. On the other hand, the Seichel says to the neshama, there is no do nothing option. If you don't do this, this is what you risk. Source 5. The evil resulting from not renouncing your bad traits is recurring worry, compounded sorrow, a constant grieving at the non-fulfillment of your worldly desires, which even if you were to attain them would only bring you what is futile, fleeting, and transitory, for it will undoubtedly pass on to somebody else. He's talking about that if the neshama wants things, in the end, those things aren't going to stay with you. Somebody else is going. We only rent things. We have things temporarily. Nothing will remain with you of this world, nor will you secure the next world. What is more, despite your lengthy efforts, you will fail to attain your desires. In other words, you will live an unfulfilled, painful life because you're not who you are. You have not fulfilled your potential and your role in this world. I don't know if I said this about last week. There's an idea about what Gehinnom was. Did I talk about this like this? Okay. So what is this Gehinnom? So Gehinnom, and I heard this from Rabbi David Orlovsky, whose podcast I recommend. He's a wonderful, wonderful speaker. More, not tonight, but as we go through. He says Gehinnom is the following. He says you sit down, surrounded by everybody, your entire family and everybody you know, and they play the film of your life, right? For X amount of years. And you are forced to watch it with your mother there, your parents there, your brothers, your sisters, the time, everybody's sitting there watching. But then that's over, right? And you sit there and you say, okay, that's done. Then they turn on another film, which is what your life could have been or should have been had you made different choices, which is perhaps the most painful. Now, he says that by tzaddikim, at the end of the first movie, the tzaddikim said, okay, that was painful. When are you going to play the next one? Because there is no next one. That's it. You lived up to your potential. You are tzaddikim. There isn't, we say that there's no tzaddik who never sinned, but you lived up to your potential. You did what you were supposed to do in this world. And that's very painful. And you can say to the neshama that that's the price you're going to pay. The space between what you were and what you could have been. So, given that, the neshama says, okay, I'll try. And he says, what exactly do I have to do? So the Seichel first gives general guidance, and the general guidance is this. Assume towards the one above you, to the Kodesh Baruch Hu, the obligations you would want from somebody below. In other words, if you were beneficent to somebody, how would you want them to behave to you? How would you want them to show their gratitude, their loyalty, because of the kindness you did to them? Right? It's a principle that we're going to see again and again, and that is to apply what we already know in this world and what we already do in our world, but in the context of the Kodesh Baruch. There's an interesting Gemara in Masechet Brachot that Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai is very sick, and he's lying on his death. And his students come to visit him, and they ask him for a bracha. He gives them the following bracha. It says, Amrulo, they say to him, Rabbeinu Bar Feinu, please give us a bracha. Amar lahem, Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai says to them, Yehi ratzon, may it be God's will, Shetehei morash shamayim aleichem, that you should rise to the level of fear of heaven, shemorah basar v'dam, like you have for your fellow. And then Amrulo told me that. The student said, really? Ad kan? That's it? That's the level you want us to reach? Amar lahem, ulavai, alavai, tedu kishe'adam over avera omer shelo yera'eni adam. We should have the same level of fear of a fellow man, then, because if we do something wrong, we look around and we say, we hope nobody saw me do that. We should also say, we hope we know the Kodesh Baruch Hu sees me do it, we're ashamed of our actions in front of people, it should rise to the level to the Kodesh Baruch Hu, right? So he says that there are really 16 areas we need to work on. And I'm going to just go through them. Any questions so far? Comments? So these are the areas that we need to work on. So one is reciprocal conduct, which is do good and refrain from evil towards Hashem, as you would expect a subordinate to do for his employer, his superior. Right? Make sure you're doing the right thing. Spend time, like we spoke in the previous gate, to reflect on the benefits that the Kadosh Baruch Hu gives us. Those that you have in common with others, and we're going to talk about this in detail, the benefits that all mankind, and what we as individuals have. Then imagine you have gotten this from your employees, right? And how they treat you. Honor and faithfulness, humility and submission. Submission is a term we're going to spend a lot of time on. That means making sure that the Kadosh Baruch Hu is your priority. Praise and service, striving to please, ongoing self-reflection. These are all gates that we're going to go through. Deep humility, knowing your place, gratitude and patience, no suspicion or complaint against the Kadosh Baruch Hu, and to exhibit servitude, have a single-minded focus, enjoy the service. We should enjoy our mitzvot, emotional alignment, making sure that when the Kadosh Baruch Hu is angry, we are angry, right? And we can hope for his kindness. And also, like we said, that there should be pleasure in service and also pleasure in obedience. So, the first one on this list, which is what we're going to talk about to the end of this year, has to do with evaluating on a very personal level, what benefits do we really receive from the Borei Olam? And we need to know this so that we can determine the level and the service that we owe him in return. I mean, we talked about proportion. If we think that it is minor, then the debt of gratitude we owe him is minor. If we think it's not minor, then perhaps it should be greater. And this is another foundational principle that Ibn Bakuda has throughout his Sefer, which is the rule of thumb that he gives us. The more generous God has been to us, the more expected and fitting it is for us to worship or thank or praise him, right? And he divides these benefits into 4 types. Now, I want you to know each of these are additive. It's not that you fall into a category, but he's building up. Really meaning that we all fall into multiple categories. So the first one is the chesed that is given to humanity, right? That you get a chesed because you are created b'tselem ha'olam, right? That's breathing, seeing, walking, being able to speak, all of that, being able to attach to people through relations, all that, everybody gets that. That's available to everybody. And the Shlach HaKadosh brings an example, is that if somebody has an eye problem, if he's blind, and the doctor is able to cure him of his blindness, gratitude to the doctor is amazing, lifelong. We're going to talk about this doctor forever. The doctor didn't create the eye. The doctor didn't attach the eye. The doctor didn't create the ability to see. Right? He was a technician. He deserves credit. But think about how much more the gratitude is and how much more the miracle is. And we do this, or we're supposed to do this, but in 2 tefillot that we say, and we mumble through them as if we were looking to say it as fast as possibly we can. One is Asher Yatzar, and the other one is Elohai Nishama. So I just want to read it to you so that we can think about what we're saying, right? So we say after we have exercised the body, right, that to show that it works, it says, "Blessed are you, Hashem, our God, King of the universe, who formed man with wisdom and created him with openings and hollows, right, mouths and ears, right? It is obviously known in your presence that of your glorious throne that if one of them were ruptured or if one of them were blocked, it would be impossible to exist and stand in your presence even for a short while." It is a prayer where we think about the wonders of the body, but it also says that if it doesn't work properly, we're not able to use it the way we're supposed to, which is to stand in your presence for a short while. That's what we say. In the morning, we say, Elohai neshama shenatata bi dahorahi. The soul you bestowed on me is pure. We should think about what we've done with this pure soul. You created it, you formed it, you breathed it into me, and you preserve it within me. You will eventually take it from me and restore it in me in the time to come. So long as the soul is within me, I give thanks to you, Hashem, my God, and God of my fathers, Lord of all creatures, Master of all souls. Blessed are you, God, who restores souls to dead bodies. These are the brachot. These are the benefits that everybody gets, right? And we have to acknowledge that. So that's kind of the general. And since all humanity enjoys them, all humanity is expected to serve God because of it. We have the Sheva mitzvot b'nei Noach. There are 7 mitzvot that were given to the world, and they have to keep it for this reason. Then it comes to that they have to keep these mitzvahs, which are logical, right? Keeping, don't kill, don't steal, no zara, having a court system. But as we said earlier, I think it was Melissa who brought it up, you have to have in mind that you're not doing this because it makes sense. You're doing this because the Borei Olam told you to. Okay. So the next one is the chesed that we receive as Jews, as Klal Yisrael. And we should appreciate what it means to be Jewish and appreciate the gifts that were just given to us. So there are 2 stories that, one of which I think I might have told before, but I don't care. It's worth telling you again. There's a Gemara in Masechet Shabbat. It says, Tanya nami hachi. It was also taught someplace else. Ladat ki ani Hashem mikadeshchem, so that you will know that I am the God who have made you holy. Amar lo HaKadosh Baruch Hu Moshe. And God said to Moshe, Matana tova yesh li bebeit genazai v'Shabbat shema. I have a special gift in my storehouse, and it's called Shabbat. V'ani mevakesh litna liYisrael. I want to give this gift to Israel. Lech v'hodiach. Go tell them about it. Now, I don't know that we really appreciate what kind of gift this is. So I'll give you 2 stories. So Paulette, my wife, worked for the UN, and we housed one of her friends for 3 months while he was looking for housing. He was coming from Rome. And so since he was there for that length of time, he spent, non-Jewish guy from Germany, actually. So he spent many Shabbatot with us. When he left, he had determined that he wanted to implement Shabbat in his house. Right? He saw the value just on a non-spiritual level, family time and singing Zmirot and having this Vira de Shabbat, right? That we have and they don't. One other story is there was a book signing in Temple Emmanuel, which is one of the synagogues in New York, where 2 people had written books, 2 converts who had become Orthodox. One was a assassin, a hitman from John Gotti, and the other was a radical black activist from Yale. Right? John Gotti, the John Gotti hitman, went into prison, and in prison he had a prison revelation, and through the books he was reading in the library, converted to Judaism and became folk. The black radical had a friend at Yale who was religious and had invited him to his house many times for Shabbat, and he fell in love with the family structure, etc. It's interesting that the mafioso fell in love with being Adam Makom, and the black activist fell in love with being Adam Lefavero. So they asked both of these, what is your favorite part about being Jewish? And they both said, like that, Shabbat. We have to appreciate the gifts that we have been given by the Kadosh Baruch Hu. The holidays, the Shabbat. I mean, these are all things that we owe gratitude to him. Okay. Third, he talks about that within Klal Yisrael, there are certain families like Kohanim, Levim, Beit David, who owe the Kadosh Baruch Hu more, because the benefits given to them are even more than just everybody in the street. So I have a dear friend back in New York named Stewie Shiur, and he's a Kohen. And I asked him once, I said, did your father ever tell you how amazingly special you are because you're a Kohen? And he said, no. I said, you have been given an eternal responsibility. I understand you're on hold right now, but you have been singled out, and we do our best to not let you forget what you are and who you are. So they get the first Aliyah, and they get to Duchen. Do you know why we do Netilat Yadayim? Not so that we won't forget. So the Kohanim won't forget. The Kohanim need to do Netilat Yadayim when they eat kosher, when they eat sacrifices. You have to wash your hands to eat chulin, to eat regular food. But the Rabbanim said, we don't want the Kohanim to forget. So we're going to, you would say, well, okay, so let the Kohanim wash. That's not what they're going to do. They're going to just say, I'm not going to do it. I don't understand that. So the Rabbanim said, everybody's going to do it. But it's amazing. Now, I know that when I'm telling you this, you're sitting there saying, okay, this category has nothing to do with me. I'm not, is there Kohanim and Leviim here? No. I'm not a Kohen, I'm not a Levi, I'm probably not going to be in Beit David, the chance of me being king is small, but it's not true. We come from Shevet Yehuda. We come from a very important family. The entire people are called after us. I said next week, or this Shabbat is Shabbat Mevorach. Right? We're going to read in 6 weeks, 5 weeks, the Megillah, and we're going to say, Ish Yehudi haya b'Shushan habira u'shmo Mordechai. Right? There was a Jewish man in Shushan. His name was Mordechai, ben Yair, ben Shimei, ben Kish, Ish Shimei. He was from the tribe of Benjamin. But he's Ish Yehudi. Right? We come from a very special family, and we received a very special bracha from Yaakov Avinu. Yaakov Avinu says, Lo yisor shevet Yehuda michokek ben ragla. That the scepter of malchut, of majesty, of kingship, will never leave the shevet of Yehuda. Will never leave us and our families. Ad ki yavo Shiloh, until Shiloh comes. What that means, it's hard to understand. V'lo yikach ami, right? And people will bring homage to us. Now, every tribe received bracha. We owe the Kadosh Baruch Hu what he has given to us as a family. Now, it's easier to talk about Kohanim and Leviim because it's more apparent. But we have to understand that we're not chopped liver either. Right? We come from a very important family. The fourth category is the special goodness that the Kadosh Baruch Hu has given to us as individuals. Right? Things that fall under the rubric of we need to count our blessings. And most of us do a pretty good job of this, right? That we sit down and that we're grateful. But we also have to include in that not just what we've received, but who we are. Our talents and our abilities that are unique to us, don't take credit for them because they were gifts. Right? People who are better at, math or science are only better at math and science because the Kadosh Baruch Hu gave them that gift. People who are better at art and poetry have also been given a gift, just a different gift, right? And it goes to athletics, and it goes to, and it's also the gifts that we have in terms of where we fit in the community and the opportunities we have been given to be part of a community and to serve in the community, play a role in the community. Nothing happens by happenstance. And we have to think about all of those things. And it racks up a lot of obligation to us. So there's a drawback to calculating and considering all of the chesed and the brachot that the Kadosh Baruch Hu gives us. And that is, we can't conceive of everything that he does for us. And we have to conceive that not only does he give it to us, but he has a tendency to want to give it to us. And I know that it could be overwhelming, but I think that's the Chovot HaLevavot's point. We should be overwhelmed and humbled. And it's even more than that, right? That, I don't know if I'm going to be able to finish, but that's okay. You'll be here next week. We have a principle that we refer to called midah keneged midah, which means that God treats us like we treat him. It's a one-to-one relationship. And we usually refer to this in terms of negatives. Right? We went to all of the plagues, and if you go to the Meforshim, they'll tell you it's midah keneged midah. They put blood they turned the manna to blood because they threw our babies into the river, right? And we even say it when we sing Yigdal, which is a shorthand for the 13 Ikarim, the 13 principles of faith. We say, Noten l'rasha rak yirishato. We gives the wicked in terms of like they've done wicked. And it also says that Gomel le'ish chesed kimifalo, the beginning of that he does chesed for people according to how they behave as well. Now, when it comes to negative, it is one-to-one. When it comes to positive, it's not one-to-one. Listen to what the Tosefta in Masechet Sota says. Midat hatov min ayin, omeret meruba midat hatov, midat haporaniot al echad michamesh me'ot b'midah. That how do we know that we know that it's one-to-one relationship for negatives? How do we know that the relationship is 1 to 500? Meaning that the Kadosh Baruch Hu pays us back 500 times the chesed that we show him. Right? And they bring a pasuk to it. So every chesed we do to serve him, that he gives back to us, it just adds to our problem. Right? It just makes it impossible. It makes it impossible to calculate and to say, okay, I give up. How can you keep up? So listen to the question of the neshama. So the neshama says, I have understood all that you have mentioned, but I do not feel myself able to repay the Creator for the services in return for his bounty, not even for all those that all men enjoy, category 1, much less for those which he has specifically favored me. Right? So I'm just so far behind the curve. And he says there's another problem. When it is my wish and desire to fulfill the service which is my duty to render him, before I have even completed forming the resolution, the hope of a future reward enters my thoughts. Meaning, I like the chesed that the Kadosh Baruch Hu gives me. And now, in my mind, I'm thinking, I'm serving him because I want the flow to continue. It's not that I'm serving him for the benefits he gives me. I'm serving him because I want more. And so it is with my gratitude to God. When I thank him for the great goodness to me in words, but my thought and intents is the wish that the reward may be continued and increase. Goes on, he says, I am not like the one who renounced all expectations of increase of the reward and continuance. I'm only human, right? You keep giving me good stuff, I'm going to want good stuff to continue. And if I behave in this way in my service in gratitude to God with so little of clear intent to fulfill my obligations for his universal goodness, really, what am I accomplishing? How will I ever be able to fulfill the rest of the service I owe him for the bounties for which he has favored me? So I'll leave you on this cliffhanger. And the Seifel obviously has an answer. And we'll begin with the answer next. Have a wonderful, wonderful week. And thank you very much.